This is, we know since Donald Trump was elected in the United States, the head of Russian intelligence in the I Narishkin. Narishkin said that he wants to meet with Ratcliffe in January 2025. Since then, he had multiple phone calls talking with him during the war in Ukraine. And right now, you see the head of CIA going to Russia. And Kremlin reported just moments ago that there was a meeting between John Ratcliffe and the head of intelligence, or the officials in Russia, but there was no meeting between Donald Trump and Ratcliffe. This is what was reported by
Wait,
Kremlin.
Putin.
With Putin. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. With Putin. What is your understanding on the mission? What was the main objective, or what is the main problems that they may consider as part of the discussions between the two sides?
Well, I mean, a while back I had I blacked out. I didn't lose consciousness, but I blacked out, and people thought it was a stroke. So I had to go to the hospital, and I was subjected to every test in the world. Boom. Now the good news was it came back and they said you're in perfect health. I mean, really good health. I'm surprised. But then the better news was they said, oh, what happened to you is an ocular migraine. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that the ophthalmologist who said this, he said, I can only have made this diagnosis by eliminating everything else. So now you've asked me, what is Ratcliffe doing in Moscow? And remember, this is sort of an extraordinary event. A C-17 taking off from Riga, Latvia, and flying through, really disputed airspace or, restricted airspace, and landing in Vnukovo without any advance notice. So it's sort of like an extraordinary event. The CIA director does not issue ultimatums to heads of state. Understand that. It just doesn't happen. Okay. Heads of state don't meet foreign intelligence officers to receive ultimatums, at least not heads of state that matter. So all this talk, and you saw this in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, all this stuff about Radcliffe was going to, issue an ultimatum to Russia. Don't mobilize. Don't, invade Ukraine more. Don't attack NATO. No, that wouldn't happen. That's something that a Secretary of State would deliver. An ambassador would deliver that if they needed be. They have an ambassador in Russia. It's also a message that could be given to a Russian ambassador in the United States. Russia has a very senior ambassador in the United States. So all that stuff out the window. Two, we have Scott Bessent, because you see this ridiculous reporting coming out of Hormuz News about somehow, Ratcliffe briefed Narishkin on Bessent's Secretary of Treasury. So the CIA director is briefing the SVR on Treasury Department activity, the threat to sanction. And then apparently Narishkin felt so overwhelmed by what he heard that he called the Iranian intelligence head and briefed him on it. Then the Iranian intelligence head went ahead and briefed two sources that then talked about it in open press to the media. Now, you are smart enough to know that the Iranian intelligence service doesn't talk much about anything that it does. That's why they're pretty good at what they do. They don't talk. But not just that, they wouldn't talk about a protected conversation with the head of a foreign intelligence service. So let's say Narishkin did make that call. We're now asked to believe that the head of the Iranian intelligence service, or somebody near him, decided to put their life on the line to brief a story to the Hormuz News that wasn't a story, because it basically said nothing's going to happen. But it also means that the head of the SVR is going to betray a protected conversation with Narishkin, which is derived from a protected conversation with Ratcliffe. So all of these protected conversations are suddenly blown, so some minor news outlet can publish a story that means nothing, that says nothing. So we have to dismiss that too. So now we come down and say, well, we're starting to eliminate things. We're starting to realize what's going on here. Now we say, has Ratcliffe and Narishkin have connectivity in the past? The answer is yes, as you said. We know that Burns and Naryshkin met on a regular basis. Burns actually flew to Moscow in 2021. And then Naryshkin and Burns met in, I think, Istanbul on the sidelines there. And there are other potential meetings, but they talked. And Naryshkin said that he'd be interested in continuing this relationship with the director of the CIA, that he felt that these back channel communications were effective ways of, keeping the lines of communication open in a times of crisis. And there have been allegedly phone calls between the two men. So the idea that Ratcliffe and Naryshkin are meeting is not a foreign idea. It's there, but it would have to be something. So what's going on? Now we have to talk about Ratcliffe. Who is Ratcliffe? Ratcliffe is the director of the CIA. Ratcliffe is a man who runs an agency whose mission has been, since Vladimir Putin came into office, to collapse the government of Vladimir Putin. That's the stated objective of the CIA. And we know that Ratcliffe runs an organization that has in Moscow a Moscow station operating out of the U.S. Embassy that's fully staffed with highly trained CIA case officers who are actively seeking to recruit Russians to betray the Russian Federation. In the United States, we have an FBI that does the same thing. And we have evidence that over time, Russia has uncovered various plots to spy on it. High-profile arrests of CIA officials seeking to recruit Russians. Numerous examples of CIA officials named by Russia and made persona non grata because they were caught red-handed seeking to spy against Russia. We also have cases where CIA operatives, operating under deep cover, were arrested seeking to spy. Remember the gentleman who worked for the Wall Street Journal was arrested in Ekaterinburg. Everybody's, oh, he's a journalist. No, he's a spy. He worked for the CIA. Straight up, everybody knows it. It's just the way it is. So that's that. Then we also know that the CIA has been at the forefront of preparing Ukraine for this conflict with Russia, even before this conflict became a conflict. We know that the CIA was working with Ukraine from 2015 up until 2022 to build upwards of 20 CIA stations along the border with Russia, actively spying. That the people responsible for this weren't analysts who were seeking to assess Russia, but paramilitary operatives seeking to destroy Russia. These are paramilitary operators who have experience in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're thugs, straight up thugs. They know nothing about Russia. They don't speak Russian. They don't want to speak Russian. They just want to kill Russians. That's all they want. And this goes back to the CIA experience in Afghanistan during the Cold War, where all the CIA wanted to do is kill Russians. The CIA people who did this didn't speak Russian. They didn't want to speak Russian. They didn't want to learn anything about Russian. They just wanted to kill Russians, paramilitary operatives. And so these paramilitary operatives, with their success, quote unquote, success in Iraq and Afghanistan, we now know it was failure. But at the time when they were killing a lot of people, they got promoted. And today they are the deputy director of operations of the CIA. They're people high up in the operations staff. And they're people that have crossed over into when you create a mission center, for instance, melding analytical capability with operational capability into a singularity, like the Russian Mission Center. The operatives, the paramilitary thugs who don't speak Russian, don't know anything about Russia, they run the thing. And so these are the people advising Ratcliffe. And what are they doing? They're working with Ukraine to launch deep strikes into Russia to kill Russians. Their job is to maximize the death rate of Russian soldiers and to punish the Russian civilians. We know because the CIA has admitted working with the Ukrainians on drone strikes into Russia's energy sector. We also know that the CIA was involved in the effort to send 98 drones to Valdai residents when Vladimir Putin was on the phone with Donald Trump in December of 2025. The CIA is in the business of killing Russians. That's it. That's all they exist to do. And so now the man who heads the organization, who openly brags about wanting to kill Russians more effectively, and they've recently talked about it as well, is now in Russia. Why? Is he telling Naryshkin, we want to kill more Russians? I don't think so. I don't think you fly into Moscow to say, we want to kill more Russians. I mean, that's a very short conversation. And by all accounts, he was on the ground for like 8 hours, and there were like 4 hours of meetings. I think actually the message from this man was, we want to stop killing Russians. And we want find a way to stop killing Russians. And we need your help. Because the normal passive diplomacy just haven't worked. I mean, Marco Rubio has no credibility. Marco Rubio is a straight up liar, and the Russians have called him out on it. It's very strange to have Secretary of State sit in on a meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin where a deal was made, where the Russians put a compromise on the table, and Donald Trump went, yeah, we can do it. That turned to Rubio, and Rubio said, yeah, we can act on that. And now Rubio is saying there was no such agreement. And Putin's like, I was there. There was an agreement. And so Marco Rubio is a liar. Can't be trusted. Won't be trusted ever again. The president's two special envoys, Kushner and Witkoff, Laurel and Hardy. I'm going to start calling them that. In fact, I think it's very effective. I was going to call them Beavis and Butthead, but they look more like Laurel and Hardy. So, this comedy duo has been flying in line to the Russians, blowing smoke up their derrieres, and the Russians just got fed up with it. And they were supposed to go this month, in August, the end of this month. And the Russians have said, nah, we're not interested. So Laurel and Hardy are staying home. Kash Patel's supposed to be going there in October, middle of October, the head of the FBI, to have intelligence on intelligence talks. Something happened they can't wait until October, and it's of such importance that it can't be entrusted to Laurel and Hardy, Witkoff and Kushner. What is it? Well, so now where's the CIA heavily involved in? Ukraine. The CIA is the driver there. And the CIA now knows the truth. I mean, for instance, if the CIA is the one driving the Ukrainian drone war against Russia, which it is, the FP-1 drones we know are the CIA's tool of choice. But the FP-1 drone, we found out, is at the center of some controversy in Ukraine today. See, Firepoint, the company that manufactures this, people should dig into Firepoint a little bit more. Let me give you a hint. It didn't exist until 2022. And it was created by three people who know nothing about drones, nothing about defense industry, nothing about anything. One was a talent scout for Zelensky-related films when he was president. The other one was a location scout. He would go find the places where you're going to make the videos so the talent scout could recruit the actors who could do the videos. And the other person was a corrupt businessman who was thrown out of Russia by the FSB because of his corruption. These three people have a link to somebody named Timur Mendich. You might recognize that name. He's a man who's currently indicted in Ukraine for billions of dollars of fraud. He's run off to Israel, of all places, but he's still trying to buy a controlling stake in Firepoint, this company that these people created with $1.5 million and zero infrastructure. Today, it's a $6 billion company with massive infrastructure. How did they get that? It was gifted to them because it's all a scam, it's all a grift, it's all a fraud. But they created this drone, the FP-1 drone, which actually designed by the British, and they sold it to the Ukrainian government at $55,000 per copy. The drone costs a little less than $5,000 to make. And in fact, there was a competing company that was going to sell the same kind of drone to the Ukrainian government for $5,000. But Fedorov, the people before him went with the FP-1 drone, FP-2 drone. Fedorov, when he became defense minister in January, is part of this. He's friendly with Mendich, by the way. It's all there. And Fedorov said, we're going to divert 60% of the drone budget to Firepoint. So Firepoint's going to become the major producer of drones. And the big purchase item was FP-1 drones and Flamingos, FP-5s. Of course, they've got FP-9 that they're working on and FP-7, the Air Interceptor, all these projects. But it's all a grift, a giant grift. But he did something worse. Fedorov, in order to pump up the profit margin for Firepoint, not just put 60% of the business to Firepoint, but diverted $27 billion. They're earmarked for the second half of Ukraine, for the totality of Ukraine's defense spending. People ask, why did Syrskyi get upset with Fedorov? Remember back in July when Fedorov was relieved and Syrskyi was saying, my God, this is horrible. And then Syrskyi was fired. Well, Syrskyi was upset because he knew the truth, that all the money that he needed to defend Ukraine, had been diverted by Fedorov to Firepoint to produce drones in a drone campaign that wasn't working. 1,400 drones flown into Russia over a course of 3 days. 8 hit their targets. Guys, do the math. 1,400 times 55,000 gives you a big number. A big number to get 8 things that go pop and have no strategic value. And now Ukraine's bankrupt. They have no money. None. They're begging the Europeans to emergency release 30 billion euro to make up for this gap. On the battlefield, the Ukrainian army is being eviscerated, slaughtered. They have no chance. Their drone operators are being murdered every day. I used to say being killed, but it's murdered now because of the level of Russian dominance of the information space overhead. I don't feel sorry for these drone operators, but they're being murdered. Oh, but now we come to the kicker. They've run out of male drone operators. They run out of men. And they're going to start mobilizing women to die in this war. The last 6 months, the first half of 2026, there were like 74,000 live births in Russia. And there were like 280,000 deaths. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. Normally you need more people to be born than die to keep the population level where it needs to be. Here, Ukraine is losing 4 times, and this is what's admitted. We know for a fact that there are hundreds of thousands of deaths on the battlefield that Ukraine's not admitting, the so-called missing in action. Abandoned bodies. We have the Russians recovering the corpses still in Kursk area of the 70 to 80,000 Ukrainians that were butchered there by the Russian army after they invaded Russia. So there's hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who aren't accounted for. So the ratio is actually closer to 8-to-1. For every Ukrainian born, 8 are dying. This is how you erase a nation state. And the CIA is good enough at math that they can figure that one out. And now they're taking the only thing that can create new Ukrainians, Ukrainian women who give birth, and they're going to kill them. They're going to murder them all. They're going to put them in the front line, and they're all going to die. And then Ukraine as a nation not just is defeated, but becomes extinct. This is an extinction-level event that's about to take place. And the United States is at the forefront of being responsible for this extinction. Not only that, but Europe is on the verge of collapse across the board. Even Germany, as Merz attempts to revive the Fourth Reich, has to admit that his economy is collapsing. They're bleeding 300 to 600 jobs a day. And they can't build new jobs because they can't afford the energy. And he admits this, and yet they want to somehow spend 800 billion euro to rebuild a German army that isn't going to be rebuilt, because when they sent out the notices to over 300,000 Germans of military age between 17 and I forget 34 or 28 or something of that nature, they got 253 positive responses. So you want to build an army of 800,000 or 400,000, I'm sorry, and you got 253 responses. That means that in order to build it, you have to have a draft, and the Germans just simply won't go for conscription, especially now that Alternative for Deutschland is sort of running away at the polls right now. So Germany's in collapse. France, Macron is gone on April 18th. The nightmare will end. Maybe a new nightmare begins, because we don't know how Marine Le Pen is going to govern. I'm not French, so I really don't care. But what I do care about is what her foreign policy will be, and apparently it's going to be very anti-NATO. Macron, who has talked about sending Rafale fighter aircraft to Finland armed with nuclear weapons to confront Russia, she'll bring those fighter aircraft back. The Northwoods Agreement between France and England, coming up with a unified nuclear deterrence posture, will be terminated. France will not link itself to the United Kingdom anymore. So France is a self-sovereign. Andy Burnham is just an embarrassment. He's sitting there, making pronouncements and all this stuff that England can't deliver on. Everybody's like, British drones, British drones, British drones, British drones. Forget about it. It's not a threat. Could they provide a couple drones that make their way through and go boom on a couple places? Yeah. But as long as they don't blow up the Kremlin or the Bolshoi Theater, it's not going to change. Russia's winning this war, and Russia's not going to disrupt this. So, the CIA director is looking at Europe saying, this is in free fall. We're not in control. And the CIA director is also getting the briefing on the global threat and realizing that, while Secretary Bessent is talking about isolating Iran, it's Iran that will be sitting in on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting summit in Kyrgyzstan at the end of this month, early September. And it's Iran who will be sitting in on the BRICS summit on September 12th and 13th in Beijing, surrounded by the world that matters, including the world's largest economy, China, which will not blink on this. And so all of this stuff comes in, and the CIA director who's responsible for coming up with a global threat assessment, I believe, has briefed this to the president. The president can't send Laurel and Hardy because Russia won't receive them. Kash Patel isn't going till October, and the message needs to be sent now of sufficient gravity that normal ambassadorial exchanges won't matter. This is a sensitive topic that needs to be discussed between two heads of intelligence services. And so I believe that Ratcliffe went to have a conversation with Narishkin about how to bring this war to an end. It wasn't an ultimatum. Russia's not in the position to receive ultimatums. They won't receive ultimatums. It wasn't groveling on the feet. The United States isn't defeated by Russia yet, and so we're not going to grovel. It was a conversation of a very sensitive nature on how Russia and the United States can find a way out of the path they're currently on.
Scott, 2 days ago, General Keith Kellogg had an interview with the Ukrainian media.
I thought you said General Keith Kellogg.
Yeah.
You did. Keep going.
No. Yeah. General Keith Kellogg 2 days ago had an interview with the Ukrainian media in which he said that if Ukraine continues the way that it has been fighting so far, everything gonna turn into, a better, future for Ukraine, or they're gonna get better as time goes by. And he believes that Ukraine is winning. This is the perception. When they invite people like Keith Kellogg talking about it, it means that the leadership in Ukraine, I don't know if we can call it the leadership in Ukraine, but they believe that they want to continue this fight. The other point is the case of Europe. You've mentioned how dire is the situation, the economic situation of Europe. But after all, we had some hope in Europe with the case of Orban, with the case of Slovakia. And we thought that maybe these people are going to change the mindset in Europe. But the new leadership in Hungary, it says just today, he mentioned that Russia is the threat, the main threat to their sovereignty or to their security. This is Europe that is getting more radicalized, is not getting less, hostile toward Russia. This is the problem that I think the major problem for the United States is how to deal with the case of Europe, because they're doubling down. They're not backing down. They're
yeah, but doubling down. I mean, Nima, I can go to Las Vegas. I've been to Las Vegas. I used to like it until I realized what it was. And it basically was a giant vacuum cleaner taking all of my money. And the notion that I was going to go in there and keep rolling the right number became obviously. And, you have children, you have higher priorities, and you realize I'd rather spend my money on my family than giving it so they can buy better chandeliers and rugs and carpets in Las Vegas. But, I know all about doubling down on stupid because I did that for a while. I wasn't addicted to gambling, but, I'd go there and, I'd say, okay, I'm allocating $500 for an evening at the craps table. But suddenly the 5 hours of rolling dice that I thought I was going to have are over an hour and a half because the dice didn't go my way. So I went to the ATM machine and pulled out another 500, believing that I could easily just put it down there, win my money back, walk away, and call it quits. But no, that money went away too. But every time I went to the ATM machine, I was convinced that things were going to turn my way. No. So we have to be careful about people talking about what's going on, because literally when we talk about Ukraine, it's a giant casino. It's a giant casino, and all the money is you're asked to invest money to gamble on Ukraine. It's a good bet. I mean, and again, Keith Kellogg, if you just keep doing what you've been doing, even though it has been working, it's going to work and everything's going to be okay. Right about the time my bank account goes to zero and I put the last $500 worth of chips on the table, thinking if I just win this bet, everything's going to be okay. But the casino didn't get built by making, my dreams come true. It got built by quashing my dreams. And the same thing with all this. You talk about Hungary. What do you think Viktor Orban was in power 16 years?
Yeah.
how long do you think Magyar is going to be? Because he hasn't solved a single freaking problem. He's not going to solve a problem, because the problem that he needs to solve is an energy-related problem. The energy only comes from Russia. There are no alternatives to that. So he can sit there and say all he wants. Understand that he's on the losing side of the equation now. The Hungarian people bought into the same manipulation of their electoral process that Romania bought into, that Bulgaria bought into. The people know the truth. The people know what matters. But when you have the European Union come in and outlaw opposition and then flood money in, again, money is the greatest narcotic. You flood money in and put money into people's pockets, they're going to tell you what they're going to do, what you need them to do. That's just the sad reality of human nature. So Hungary is not a reflection on the deep-seated feeling of the Hungarian people that Russia is the enemy. Not at all. What you're seeing is a politicized, verbiage coming out of the mouth of a man who has sold his soul to the European Union, a non-existent entity that's collapsing as we speak. The addicts, the people addicted to the Ukrainian casino, they're doubling down. There's no doubt about it. They have no other choice. They're too far in. They can't walk away. They can't explain to their wife why there's no more money in the ATM. They've got to try and win. They're not going to. It's pathetic. So Europe is going nowhere. What is Europe? I mean, if you can articulate one thing of substance Europe is doing, substance. I'm not talking about hot air. I'm talking about substance. Give me something substantive. And please don't talk about drones, because that's not substantive. That's a facade. Substantive is armored divisions. Substantive is aircraft wings. Substantive is, artillery. If you're going to say, they're just giving them some more drones to go pop, that's nothing. That's not a solution. You could take $27 billion, redivert it to drone manufacturing, and surge drones into Russia at a rate of 1,400 every 3 days. But when all but 8 get shot down, please don't tell me that's something substantive. It's not. It's propaganda. Burning down Wild Berries warehouses is not a victory. I don't care, Stump. Is that his name, Stump? Stump, the Finnish president? Stump. Whoever he is, you know who I'm talking about. The guy who just went to, but he's like, every Wild Berries, warehouse that's burned up is 10% of the Russian economy. Really? No, it's not. But but this is the kind of fiction, fantasy-based fiction these people work on, as if they're doing something, and it causes the Russian population to lose support. I mean, right now, according to him, over 60% of the Russian population is against the war in the special military operation. 60%. Then why does Putin have 76% approval rating and it's going up? I don't know. See, the numbers don't add up. But the fact of the matter is, Europe is nothing. It's a big nothing burger. There's nothing of substance in Europe today. And Russia knows this. This is why Russia's just going to ride out all the provocations that are taking place, which is, again, why I don't buy into the Wall Street Journal's narrative, which is part of the information warfare taking place. That U.S. intelligence picked up on Russia trying to mobilize 300 to 500,000 men after the election. I mean, hey, man, if it happens, I'll eat my shoe live on TV. Who knows what's going to happen? But there's no evidence of this, and the Russian government has gone out of its way to say that's not happening. It's not needed. And the fact is, it isn't needed. They are meeting their manpower requirements through their existing recruitment. It's actually getting better. One of the unintended consequences, I guess, of the drone war unleashed by Zelensky is that people who were otherwise avoiding military service are saying, screw it, this thing got to come to an end, and they're signing up. St. Petersburg, sort of home of the liberal elite.